zone on the eastern end of the airport. And in order to approve any purchase of that property, we need to first establish a budget that would facilitate that. So this proposed budget amendment would appropriate an additional $382,000 out of our capital projects fund, and it would also use the $1 million that we have set aside for the expansion of the Public Works facility to complete that purchase, with the understanding that when the money was reimbursed from the FAA and UDOT, that project would be restored.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'd like to open the public forum for a public hearing for the capital funds project funding for $1.382 million for the acquisition of property. It's been reserved by anybody like to come forward and be able to do so. You guys can counsel, please state your name. Don't forget to raise your hand also, I'll call you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Figured it wasn't a long line here. Tracy Taylor, Heber City. My question is, with this transfer of funds, do we actually have a written offer that's been accepted? I mean, where are we in this whole process of, since, you know, we're transferring funds already?
On the agenda, the last item on tonight's agenda is to, council is going to consider the approval of the purchase of the agreement. So there is a written offer that the council has in their possession.
Okay. And I think it's only appropriate to bring this up a little bit because, you know, we've been listening to the conversation that you all have had about purchasing this property for about 4 months, maybe, I'm guessing, often 3-4 months. And not once did I hear any kind of discussion about how this possibly could happen at the city. You know, being a real estate broker, I've been aware of that property for sale for 4 or 5 years. Not once did anybody at the city, whether it be a commission, the planning commission, the city planner, the airport board, the airport manager, the city manager, nobody noticed that this zoning was the way it was on this corner. That concerns me as a taxpayer because I look at this $1.3 million as a very costly mistake. There's no other way to look at this, and this has never been brought up in conversation with the city council, which as a taxpayer really concerns me because first of all, I don't want this to happen again. So how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? And who's responsible for this? I mean, quite honestly, this is a $1.3 million mistake. Where's the accountability? Who's in charge of bringing that to your attention? I, as a citizen, would like to know that you had a really tough, hard conversation about this, and I haven't heard it in 4 months. So, with you voting to buy this property, in my mind, this never should have happened. Never should have happened. It was listed for 5 years, 4 years. You had plenty of time to notice, uh-oh, that's up for sale. Long before somebody was interested in it. So we have people on staff that we as taxpayers pay their salaries to protect us. And it failed miserably, in my view. So I think it's only fair that the taxpayers in Heber City hear some sort of discussion about how this possibly happened, who's in charge of keeping track of this, because there should be somebody. Because there's a vacant piece of property right across the street from this property right now, on the southeast corner of that intersection. That's for sale right now, and it has L&L Repair on the corner. Are we gonna let the gas station go there? Is 200 feet far enough away to put the gas station? I mean, if you're that concerned about safety. We talked about the city, the school district bus garage. And that's even closer to the runway. So I just feel like this is a huge mistake. If somebody made this mistake in the private sector, there would be some action taken. Something. So that's my question to the city council, is who's in charge of keeping track of this? Why somebody didn't notice it? And I would like to hear some accountability for a $1.3 million mistake, quite honestly. Thank you.
Anybody else like to come address the council? You have 30 seconds. I'll close the public hearing. Turn some time over to council for a minute. But if there's any discussion you'd like on this agenda item, remember that. Any comments?
Tracy, Kelly and I have asked those same questions in the meetings. We've asked why weren't the aviation easements tighter? How could the bus garage get built? And of course, the cost. We've asked those questions. There are some navigation easements there, but not for all of the length of the property. And right now, across the street, I think there's a dentist that wants to build, so it won't be a gas station. To me, this is a real safety issue, though. I've seen the planes land, and I've seen how close they come, to less than 100 feet over that property as they come in. And to me, it's just a safety issue. Now, I wish, now that we're discussing this more, I wish that we could divide that property and let some of the property still be developed that's the furthest east as you come down the corner, so we could get some more property tax base to our city. The FAA, of course, we haven't even discussed that. We haven't even thought about that. I just kind of thought of it right now. But the part closest to the airport, I do think, should be, in that RPZ zone. And granted, that doesn't mean I want a gas station on that very east part, because, it's still so close when the planes come in. But maybe in the future we could work that with the FAA. Maybe we could, Mark, work with the FAA to say that, we'll pay for that other half that's closest, on the east end, and then we could maybe sell that to a private developer in the future that wouldn't, be quite as dangerous as the gas station. That's probably the first time we've ever talked about this here. I would prefer to keep as much as we could under a tax base that's taxable and productive for the city, but we still need, I believe, to provide safety for those planes that are landing just right there on the closest side to the Highway 189.
We did ask the question, how can we ensure this will never happen again? And we talked about were there any other properties that were any potential or anything like this could happen. And my understanding is there are not. There's nothing within that RPC that could potentially be an issue. Is that correct?
We own the runway on we own the property in fee title on the western end of the airport. The Crooksville piece down there, and it's solely out of use for agricultural purposes. There is possibly some of the property on the Wagstaff piece that's in agricultural use right now that's hard to access. On the eastern end, we have easements over the school bus garage. The FAA was fine with the use when it was a log storage building, and they're fine with the school bus garage. They don't see that as something that has a congregation of people for many hours of the day or days of the year. In fact, discussion with the FAA yesterday said that they wouldn't object to us putting that building to use if we had a viable, if we could use it for storage or something like that, equipment, as long as there weren't people that were, office there. So I think there may be some utility that building could offer the city for storage of items that we really don't have any good places to store right now. There's a couple garages there that maybe we could store equipment that's not used in the wintertime.
Unfortunately, Mark, isn't it true though that because we're using FAA funds, first of all, even if there was space, I want to pay $500,000 for that space. But if they buy it, then it's very controlled, we can't sell it, the uses, they can maybe allow the city to use it, but principally it needs to be airport related.
Yeah, I've not heard any objections as far as us utilizing the building, but
Yeah.
typically...
But to sell it to someone else or another business would be a
I
problem.
think that's problematic. Once you use, 95+% of the funds coming from other sources, yes.
Unfortunately.
So one of the responses I received when asking how could this have ever happened was that when that alignment changed, that piece became more valuable, obviously, because of access. So who is monitoring that? Like, in case something else changes, like, and right now, it doesn't seem like there's a possibility for a problem, but what if something else changed? Like, is that...
Well, the school bus garage could turn into something different.
Right, so who watches over that and makes sure that what's going on with those properties, and if the school bus does try to do something different?
I guess I and the airport would try and monitor those kind of things. They may talk with planning about creating a separate zone there that would prohibit the same kind of uses that the FAA would find objectionable.
Because we talked about that, and you said we have to pay people if we try to restrict it further at this point.
Well, if we bought additional easements, yes.
Well, it seems like we need to have it so they couldn't change it to something that...
We could explore some zone changes that would still permit the uses that are there, but would prohibit the uses that are incompatible with the runway protection zone of the airport.
I thought I heard that discussion before I was on the council about wishing this had been zoned sooner and that you were going to proceed to that, but 2 months later we haven't, and so I think we should.
Are we kind of just trying to gamble that it's probably not going to happen, so we don't want to spend money on purchasing more restrictive easements? Is
I
that...
think it's just a matter of allocating the staff time to pursue it.
Do we have to pay those? Is that what you're saying? I
It
mean, can't we just change it? I mean,
depends on, if it's a zone change, I don't think there's a payment associated, but if it's additional restrictions via easement, yeah, you're going to have to compensate the people.
can we create a zone that meets all the requirements so that this can never happen again and just put it in the whole entire...
I think it could be explored. I mean, the people that have the property may say, hey, you're abusing some of my rights with the zone change and object to it.
Wouldn't that just be for the bus garage, or would it be more properties?
Within the RPZ, it's just the bus garage and the property that we're anticipating purchasing.
So that should
On that end of the airport, yeah.
maybe instead of needing to pay the school district, we could work out a deal where we have to pay their impact fees, and then, we wouldn't have to bill them any longer if there was some kind of restricted requirement there. Is that was meant to be as mild?
Any other discussion with council or comments? Good suggestion.
Well, I really wish we could consider this new idea to somehow split the land so that the very east end that goes around that final curve to the south could still be used or sold as private property. We have to work it out with the FAA, obviously, and that means that we will be buying it. I'm sure we could sell it.
I think they have a different agenda than we do. I think the FAA might have a different agenda than we do, so they're not looking for solutions that are going to increase our property tax base.
I think it's worth pursuing if your council is interested.
That's an option, I just like the option of to be able to use it for storage. But some of those
Expensive
units and
storage,
some
those.
equipment stuff, city parks, probably for equipment, whatever. So it's still a usable piece of property. I wouldn't want to take down that building. I'd like to use it for what we can for purposes for the city. We have storage stuff in there. When we got stuff that's coming out of these things, we don't want to put equipment. So maybe you can look at that storage to give permission to do something.
Could we at least make it look nice? Welcome to Heber sign, and I mean, it's such a prime location when you're coming into the city. It's right where everyone sees it. At least they should pay to have it landscaped and have a nice Heber sign. The FAA should.
You just have to be cautious and make it so nice that it attracts people that you really don't want there.
Yeah, I just think rather than having it look like a weed patch, it would be nice.
I think we need to put goats on it.
Goats are fine. Horses, goats.
Chickens.
Chickens.
So I think there's some things we could do from a landscaping standpoint.
Well, is anybody interested in seeing about paying for half of it on that one side ourselves, keeping it, selling it off to a private business that would somehow fit underneath what would be a gas station? Anybody interested in that?
What I'd suggest is that we could explore that if the council wants to, but if we go that route, we wouldn't be prohibited from, if the FAA approved the sale of a portion of that property, we just have to refund their investment in that property. So rather than have us front the money while we explore that, I'd rather use their money to see if that's possible.
Well, I'm just saying, I think it's feasible, and I don't know how big of a piece it would be. That, you know, the piece I'm concerned about is right next to 189, because that's where they come down so low, so close.
Well, yeah, the RPZ is primarily on that western end of the property there from that retention pond westward.
You run into access issues if you have anything on that.
So yeah, you do have access issues that, based on the desire to limit access to that Heber Parkway, you have an access off of 189 and one off of Daniel Road kind of, but that's the only access points that exist other than what the city would be willing to grant.
There are other legal uses, but they're not what FAA would support once they buy it. That's
Well, particularly within the roadway protection zone area, that's the most critical area.
Well, I don't want to belabor the discussion when it ties into item number 9, but I don't intend to support this. That's fine. I know the rest of you do, but I think we have other alternatives. It was not prohibited. It was a desire of the FAA, but not prohibited use. It was zoned. Whether we should have fixed it or not, we didn't. And it was legally approved. It legally could be there. And I think I just at least want to know that whether the FAA is putting money in or not, that's still our money. And secondly, out of pocket for the city will be at least $70,000 as our share. So that isn't like this isn't costing us. But I mean, it's a matter of discussion. I don't want to belabor it, but I don't plan to vote.
But for motion to council, we'd like to do with resolution 2015, which amends the operating budget for 2015-16, resolution 2016-43.
I'll plug my nose and make a motion. I don't really like it, but I don't plug very much truth. I will make a motion that we approve resolution number 2016-03, amending the 2015-2016 capital projects budget.
Motion by Councilmember Potter to approve resolution 2016-03, which amends the operating budget to $1,382,000.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Smith. Any other discussion on the motion that was stated?
Mayor, it's really only amending the budget by $282,000, but it does require the reallocation of money to set aside
All in favor of the motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
It's amazing. Councilmember Creighton, motion carries with 4 affirmatives.